The persistent rain will clear southeastwards throughout the morning, with sunshine showers following. The risk of snow in the north continues.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A busy show tonight in The Big Question, with Jimmy Carr sparking condemnation over a joke about the Holocaust. Should we be censoring comedy? My Mark Meets guest is an Olympic legend, Devon Harris, who was part of the iconic 1988 Jamaica bobsleigh team. The unlikely but heroic story which inspired the hit Disney movie Cool Runnings. Devon Harris is now an inspirational speaker, and you won't want to miss his incredible story at 10. Plus, reacting to the big stories of the day is the brilliant Peter Edwards, journalist and former editor of Labour List, writer and agony aunt Hilary Freeman, and one of the few politicians everyone likes. It's Lembit Opik. Plus, my big opinion is on the way. In my view, the media got it wrong on COVID, and we've all paid the price. First up, here are the headlines with Tamsin Roberts.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister has announced 2 new appointments to Downing Street after a wave of resignations this week. Cabinet Minister Steve Barclay is to become Boris Johnson's Chief of Staff, saying it's an honour to have been asked. Gitto Harry, who was an advisor to Mr Johnson when he was Mayor of London, will become Director of Communications. The Prime Minister says the changes will strengthen his cabinet and accelerate his mission to level up the country. The announcement comes as the former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was Schools Minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Conservative MP for Thurston Moulton, Kevin Hollinrake, told GB News the Prime Minister is still popular.
There's a lot of support for Boris Johnson out there. I mean, it's different in Westminster and it's different in the media, of course. But I do not think we should have a Prime Minister removed from office in this country because of a media lynch mob. I think we need to go through this process properly. I think we need to see the results of the inquiry and the investigations and make a proper decision from there.
The Duke of York is due to give evidence under oath next month as part of the ongoing civil sex assault case against him. Prince Andrew will face what is known as a deposition in London in what has been described as a neutral location. Virginia Giuffre, the Duke's accuser in the case, claims he sexually assaulted her when she was 17. The Duke strenuously denies all allegations. Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street say the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution remains the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO does not allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. And the Queen has hosted a reception in Sandringham for members of the local community as part of celebrations to mark her Platinum Jubilee. The 95-year-old monarch welcomed guests, including former cookery student Angela Wood, who helped invent the famous dish Coronation Chicken. It was served to guests after the Queen's coronation in 1953. Today, Her Majesty also cut a sponge cake decorated with the Platinum Jubilee logo. You're up to date. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Now, though, let's get back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Many thanks to Tamsin, who's back in an hour. It is Saturday, February the 5th, and you are watching Mark Dolan tonight. A brilliant evening of Saturday night entertainment we have for you. Big opinions, big stories, big guests, and a few laughs along the way. In the big question, following Jimmy Carr's controversial joke about the gypsy community in his Netflix show, should comedy be censored? We'll hear from all sides on that one. My Mark Meets guest tonight is Olympic legend Devon Harris, who inspired the iconic 1988 Jamaica bobsleigh team. The unlikely but heroic story which inspired the hit Disney movie Cool Runnings. Devon Harris is now an inspirational speaker, and you won't want to miss his incredible story at 10. Plus, reacting to the big stories of the day are three very good friends of mine. Peter Edwards, journalist and former editor of Labour List. Writer and agony aunt Hilary Freeman. And last but not least, the Housewives' favourite, borderline national treasure, ex-Lib Dem MP and now presenter and filmmaker, Lembit Opik. Plus another great British game show, and two top comedians join me after 11 to look at tomorrow's papers in headliners. You can email me throughout the show, mark@gbnews.uk. You know I love hearing from you. It's the best bit of my show. And I take all emails, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there you go. A busy show, lots to get through. Let's crack on. A major new study confirms that PCR tests are horribly inaccurate. Now, there is a surprise. According to researchers at the University of Oxford, if you've heard of it, a third of people who tested positive for coronavirus via PCR tests were not contagious and did not need to self-isolate. A third. The study found that many laboratories are setting the positivity bar very low, meaning they're picking up people who are, quote, a danger to no one. This follows a change in focus halfway through the pandemic in relation to hand sanitizing. Do you remember our blistered skin in March 2020? Sing happy birthday twice as you wash your hands? Crazy. After which, a couple of scientists with half a brain cell pointed out that the virus is transmitted through the air via aerosols. No sugar Sherlock. How about this one? A report came out in August of last year suggesting those environmentally catastrophic perspex screens that you see in shops, offices and on TV may make matters worse. The Environmental Modelling Group, a panel of 16 SAGE experts, said there's some epidemiological and mechanistic evidence that suggests screens could increase risks of aerosol transmission due to blocking or changing airflow patterns or creating zones of poor air circulation. Well done, everyone. What about cloth face masks that we've been ordered to wear at such environmental, societal and economic cost? Lockdown-loving CNN's chief medical reporter said just last month that you should not wear a cloth mask, that they are facial furniture. Cloth masks and those plasticky blue surgical masks, which are not accepted in Austria or Germany, make up the vast majority of the masks that we've been wearing in this country. Even where countries have demanded better N95 masks, like in Austria, cases have skyrocketed. Go figure. What happened to follow the science? What about vaccine passports? We're saving lives, aren't we? Except that cases have continued to soar in countries that have implemented these divisive measures which link your medical status to certain basic rights, freedoms and privileges, including, in particular, France and Italy, where the vaccine passports have clearly failed, but also closer to home, here in Wales and Scotland. What about closing nightclubs? The Welsh First Minister, Mark Dolan, who likes a boogie himself, was not able to demonstrate any evidence that closing nightclubs would have an impact on spread. Evidence-based policy, along with free speech and common sense, has been another casualty of the pandemic. What about lockdowns themselves? 2 years in which we've incarcerated the healthy, stopped people from going out to work and making a living. We've closed once viable businesses, wrecked mental health and ignored worse diseases like cancer. What do we have to show for it? Well, the Telegraph are reporting that up to 87,000 cancer diagnoses may have been missed. 87,000 and the rest. If you think COVID is worse than cancer, then there's something wrong with you. But that has been the message of the pandemic response. If it's not COVID, they don't care. That's something I've heard from so many of you over the last 2 years. The famously deadly disease of cancer that affects all age groups has been relegated in importance for 2 years, with tragic consequences that will be with us for a long time to come, with cases like young mothers who didn't get that lump checked or weren't able to. Well done, everyone. There will be a day of reckoning for what Professor Jay Bhattacharya, one of the most respected medics in the world, has called the biggest public health mistake in history. Well, he's being polite. In my view, it was the mother of all cock-ups. So who's to blame if it was a mistake? Well, weak politicians who panicked in March 2020 and discarded decades of pandemic planning, something to which Sweden actually committed. They stayed with the existing pandemic strategy. Sweden have seen a fraction of the economic damage, the societal damage, and they've had fewer per capita deaths than so many countries that locked down hard. I blame the modelers, like the randy Professor Pants Down himself, Neil Ferguson, who predicted 500,000 deaths at the start of the pandemic, which spooked ministers into taking this ruinous path. Some government scientific advisors predicted 6,000 deaths a day if we didn't cancel Christmas. Take a look at this from The Guardian. Look at that. UK scientists are saying bring in curbs now or face up to 2 million daily COVID infections as Omicron spreads. 6,000 deaths a day. And that was in December. 6,000 deaths a day. You couldn't make it up. It was clear at that point from South Africa that Omicron was milder than a last of the summer wine cast reunion. I blame SAGE as well, who failed to equate economic damage with death. The University of Bristol have spoken to me in an interview linking the pandemic to a huge reduction in life. 300 years, of course, is the scale at which we've had a last big recession, and they would argue that lives will be lost as a result. But not just lost lives. What about wrecked lives? It's a question no one has ever been able to answer me. Why is it okay to wreck lives? Of course, it isn't, but wreck them we did. And it's most reprehensible when you think of the needless impact on young people and children who face a vanishing threat from the virus. So who else do I blame? Well, I blame the media. I won't call them the mainstream media because we are mainstream too, baby. Our numbers are growing like wildfire. Over 4 billion people have watched on digital since we started, and I'm personally normally beating Sky News at about this time. So tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word, and let's change the world together. But I blame others in the media for offering just one narrative. Lockdowns work, masks work, and absolutely everybody's got to have the vaccine, come what may. Now, these views are valid. Arguably, they're shared by a majority of the public and perhaps most scientific professionals. That's what they think, no problem. Let's hope that they're right, because that's the hell they've put us through. But as data comes from around the world based upon different approaches with no obvious difference in outcomes from where I'm standing, I've got my doubts. But remember those press conferences, the Beeb, Sky, ITV, always the journalists asking, why are we not locking down longer, tougher, harder? By offering such one-sided coverage of the pandemic, by betting everything on the words of Sage, and by freezing out other scientific voices like Sunetra Gupta, Carl Hennigan, Martin Kulldorff and Jay Bhattacharya, in my view, the media let us down. Now, to say that the media have lied to you is a bit strong, but they have not provided the full picture in relation to COVID. And any lawyer will tell you concealing information is tantamount in its own way to an untruth. Should we be polite? Should we just be polite and call it government propaganda? I think that'll do. Now, I shouldn't name names, but I will. The Mail and the Telegraph are the only papers I can think of that have consistently balanced their reporting and have dared to offer a critique about these debatable lockdowns. The Guardian, on the other hand, whilst being a paper that I've always admired and read every day, has been disappointing. Where was their coverage of the Johns Hopkins University report, a meta-analysis of 24 studies into lockdown, suggesting the measures saved 0.2% of lives, whilst, of course, exacting colossal harm? Now, this wasn't peer-reviewed, and the study has been done by economists, but worth reporting, I think you'll agree. This is Johns Hopkins University. It's not some nutter tweeting from his grandma's bedroom. Here is the professor, an eminent economist, who ran the study, blasting his own college and the media for not publicising the study as it doesn't fit the narrative. There's a surprise. Now, poor people have especially been impacted by the measures, so you would have thought the Guardian, supposedly left-leaning, would care about that. In the end, I think the media have got this wrong. They've backed the wrong horse, and in my view, they are on the wrong side of history. So there will be a day of reckoning for their one-sided coverage. But will we ever get an admission of guilt, or dare I say it, an apology? Well, I doubt it. There will be no contrition. And for all of those well-paid and high-profile figures in the media, we know who they are, the relentless cheerleaders for these disastrous and, in my view, failed measures. Sorry seems to be the hardest word. Reacting to the big stories of the day is my amazing panel tonight. Former Lib Dem MP and now broadcaster and filmmaker Lembit Opik, author, journalist and agony aunt Hilary Freeman, and broadcaster, journalist and former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards. Peter, let's start with you. Do you think the media has been unbalanced in the course of this pandemic?
Not particularly, no. I think your monologue had more holes in it than a 2-year-old face covering. There are a lot of things I want
to... At least you've admitted maths don't work.
There are a lot of things I'd like to disagree with. So let's just take a couple. The predictions from the academic you quoted, I think it was Professor Neil Ferguson, about the millions of deaths that didn't happen. That wasn't if we had a lockdown. He said if the government took no action, there'd be the higher number of deaths. And of course, governments in every major economy in the world did take action. So I do think you quoted that out of context, while going on to make the point yourself that quoting people out of context is tantamount to an untruth.
Sweden didn't have lockdowns.
Have done that.
Sweden. Sorry, let me interrupt because I know the facts are irritating. But Sweden did not lock down. They did not have mask mandates. They kept restaurants and hospitality open, and they kept schools open as well for almost 2 years.
I think this might be where you're collapsing under your own contradictions, because Sweden did have pandemic planning.
Correct.
Britain did not have pandemic planning. So I don't think it's accurate when you say Britain abandoned its pandemic planning. That's a very hard sentence to say at 9 o'clock at night. Britain didn't have pandemic planning, and that was one of David Cameron's biggest regrets, and he's been open that was one of his regrets. And perhaps if Britain did have better pandemic planning, wouldn't have been in this position. The other thing I want to make quickly is about lockdown and the quote from the American university study. I have to remember, when we've had 2 years of headlines about COVID, as I understand it, lockdown, the primary purpose of lockdown was not to save lives. As I understand it, the first lockdown was brought in to protect the NHS from being overburdened. That's the key difference. Of course, they're related, and I'd say that the NHS has probably escaped by a hair's breadth only from total collapse. But the first lockdown was to spare the NHS. It wasn't primarily to save lives.
And how would you respond to the fact that a peer-reviewed study calculated after the third national lockdown that cases were falling before the country went into lockdown on every single occasion?
Well, I think we know from the pandemic there are waves. I don't think that undermines what most of I and independent, politically neutral scientists are saying. The pandemic has been in waves for 2 years, and it's been in waves in several countries. So 1 week's trend has little impact on another week's trend.
What do you think about this, Lembit?
Well, we can see who's right because of what I might call the New Zealand experiment. New Zealand has been very successful at preventing the spread of COVID-19, but that may not have been a good idea. We'll find out shortly because essentially they lack immunity, or if they get the vaccination sorted out, we'll find out what happens if you have essentially a virgin sample of people who haven't been exposed to it extensively when they have been vaccinated. I just don't agree with what Peter said. My judgment is that the government has been drifting, guessing what to do, while we've been praising Sweden. Sweden seemed to have a plan. One of the problems we've got, of course, is we've got an absolutely pathetic opposition in this country. All Keir Starmer seems to want to do is support the government, so he's not really given it any critical analysis. What should we have done? I was actually quite sympathetic to herd immunity at the beginning because at least the country would have dealt with the disease and then moved on. I had it. It's a really bad disease. It's a really bad disease. But at the same time, what do we achieve by having changed our policies along the way? One piece of advice, it's retrospective, so it's pointless. The government should have chosen one path and stuck to it, and they didn't, and that's where they really went wrong.
Hilary Freeman, what's your view? Do you think that the media has been balanced in the course of this pandemic?
I think that the media has reported lots and lots of different studies, and just like the government, it's been playing catch-up. Everything is, you can't make a decision, you can't report something until it's happened. The studies that have been coming out, the media's been reporting studies. They may contradict each other, but that's always the case, and that's what science is. It's doing studies that may contradict a previous study, and that's how you get to a conclusion about something. And we didn't know at the beginning what was going to happen. We didn't know how the virus was going to mutate. We didn't know what numbers were going to die. We didn't know. We just had to guess. And I think the media has reflected, exactly that. I think also the media has a responsibility to people not to report sort of wildly. Opinions that aren't in the mainstream, and when they have done that in the past, I think that maybe that because of like the Andrew Wakefield effect, they were probably quite nervous of reporting studies that weren't in the mainstream as well. But I think we do have an obligation, you have a responsibility to people's safety as well. You can't just write whatever you like.
No, but the thing is that makes the media partial. It makes the media part of the establishment when, in my view at least, the best media is questioning. And I think that, as Mark said at the beginning of the show, that right to question has been not just stamped down but oppressed. You're essentially, being called an anti-vaxxer is almost a moral crime.
Limbit, there were daily press conferences at which dozens of questions were asked. We've had probably hundreds of daily press conferences, the purpose of which was to ask questions.
And I don't remember any lockdown sceptic questions. That's the issue, Peter. Look, I'm a fan of measures that work, Peter. So the vaccine has been fantastic at reducing hospitalisations and death. I welcome it. I think if you're in a vulnerable group, you'd be bonkers not to have it. But the hand sanitising didn't work. The Perspex screens didn't work. The masks didn't work. Lockdowns didn't work. And no apology, and the madness continues. A lot of that nonsense propagated by the media. Name one lockdown sceptic journalist at the BBC.
Mark, that's nonsense. I don't
Name
follow
one.
the BBC.
Laura Kunsberg?
I don't follow the BBC as closely as you do, and I know you have a bit of an issue with the BBC.
ITV, LBC, name me a lockdown sceptic broadcaster that wasn't from GBNews or Talk Radio.
Well, Mark, you're a full-time journalist. You should have researched that before the show.
There is. Well, there is. No. You don't have to research it. They don't exist. There was Najib Jawaz, but he was fired by LBC last month.
So what?
Well,
that doesn't
because
prove
the
anything,
media, Peter, the media
Nonsense.
have got this stitched up. They've decided that lockdowns work, we've got to wear masks, we've got to have restrictions forever.
Mark, if you've got it stitched up, why does no one in the rest of the media or in politics in any party agree with you?
But hang on a sec, Peter. The issue here is surely that we have the right to test these things, and we're not really being allowed to test these things.
Who's stopping you testing it?
Well, public opinion, people like you and most of the...
How am I stopping you?
Well, you're not oppressing me in this programme, but
OK, well,
you seem to
so
be
who is stopping you?
You seem to be perfectly comfortable in accepting, as Mark's asked, and obviously he was challenging you to give a name, and you can't because there aren't any names,
it's
of
not my
people
job.
who would be regarded as, let's say, vaccination or lockdown sceptics. Now, you may disagree with those people. You may think lockdown's good. We haven't even had the debate. It's the decline and fall of the age of reason. Obviously, people think, regular viewers know I think the same thing's happening about the climate change debate. But when it comes down to it, it's OK to question vaccinations. I've seen some quite worrying data about that, in fact. It's OK to challenge lockdown. But as Mark said, the rest of the mainstream media doesn't even allow you to ask the question.
Lembert, Mark, I think you're collapsing under the weight of your own contradictions. To give one quick example, I support free speech, but every time I come on GB News, there is a veiled critique, or not veiled critique, of lockdown. And I don't see how you can then say there's a mainstream media narrative and there's no debate when you then have that debate every time.
Yeah.
You're having the debate now.
On GB News, that's the point, Peter.
Yeah.
We have that debate on GB News. It's not a debate you'll find on the BBC, ITV or on Sky.
You've
it just
got to
isn't.
stop obsessing
Or The Guardian.
about
Let me give you a quick
broadcasters.
example, Peter. Let me give you an example. Why did that story about PCR tests being woefully inaccurate not appear in The Guardian? Why wasn't it run on the BBC? Why didn't I watch that on the ITV News today? It's a massive story. A third of people were self-isolating who didn't have to. What is the impact on the economy and on people's lives for that?
I want to ask a particular question about this because your monologue, and I've not seen the original story. So in your
Yeah, because you only read The Guardian.
I don't read The Guardian at all, actually. I'm sorry if that shatters the illusion of a lefty. But anyway, in your monologue, you said a third of people who tested positive for coronavirus by PCR tests were not contagious. Now, that doesn't mean the tests were wrong, because you can be positive and not contagious. So can you clarify that?
And you think it's good for the economy for them to be sat at home whilst not being contagious? They could be NHS surgeons, they could be school teachers, they could be somebody that's contributing to the economy which pays for the NHS.
Mark, sometimes it's a hallmark of someone who's been rumbled. When I ask them a question, they move it on to a different topic. Can you clarify the point in your monologue? A third of people who tested positive for COVID were not contagious. Does that mean the tests were wrong or the tests were correct, but they were uncontagious?
Well, the point is that the way that the tests have been calibrated is that the bar is so low that you're showing a positive test, but you're not contagious. So you get an instruction to stay at home, but that's damaging to society and the economy, and people should have got out to work. In my view, briefly, Peter, I think if we had had no measures whatsoever from the start and just given people information about the virus and the risks, we would be in a better position today.
Well, no one will know that, and we'll never know, and you can't prove it.
Can you name a country that did nothing that's had a cricket score death toll compared to others?
It's your job to research these things, not mine.
I'm asking you because they don't exist. Peru had the strictest measures of all. Peru was forcing people to dig graves for COVID dead if they weren't wearing a mask. And they've been top of the World COVID League for a long, long time.
OK, let's rename this Peru TV. Hillary, let's hear your view.
I think it's really stupid to try and compare countries with other countries which are totally different from each other. You know, we are nothing like Peru. We're nothing like New Zealand. We're nothing like Sweden. Our population is much bigger than Sweden. We've got much more obesity.
I hate to interrupt you, Hillary, but Sweden has a higher population density than Scotland and a fraction of the COVID death toll per capita.
Well,
that's nonsense. Sweden contains very densely populated cities. You can compare states in America. Florida, which unlocked months ago, and they've seen fewer COVID deaths per capita, age-adjusted, than California, who only exited lockdown a few weeks ago.
OK, I don't know. I'm not an expert on the demographics of Sweden, but you know, what I'm saying is that different populations have different issues, and one of the, some of the research that's coming out now, which is suggesting that perhaps one of the reasons that we've had such a high death toll in this country is because of our diet.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you can't necessarily compare with a country where they have a completely different diet.
Well, that's right, but that takes lockdowns out of the equation, Hillary.
Well, I think people just didn't know how to deal with this pandemic. And I think it's very easy in hindsight to criticise what people did and the way it was reported, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there was a better way at the time.
Hillary, look, you're a great journalist in your own right. Do you not think that it's been rather one-sided, the reporting of the pandemic from ITV, The Beeb and Sky?
I suppose that they have reflected the mainstream narrative, but I still believe that if you turn on your TV and you see a conspiracy theorists saying what they think about something, it's going to cause mass panic. People aren't going to follow. They're not going to follow what the government has told us to do. So I do think that the mainstream media does have some sense of responsibility in that regard. And I think I do believe in free speech, but I think that you've got to. You can't just allow people to come on and talk about something without, being sure that what they're saying is not going to be dangerous.
But we're living in a coercive society now. What really bothers me, I understand the point you're making, but I see it in the opposite way. I think that we've been told that there will be disaster if we don't vaccinate. There'll be disaster if we don't lock down. And stepping back from this, I see a bigger picture where we see the rise of authoritarianism. I'm an intense libertarian. And I realise the biggest single mistake the government's made, and to its great shame, the Labour Party, the opposition didn't see this, is regulation. What Boris Johnson should have said is, we're not going to introduce laws because we can't really enforce them, but let's work on this maturely. But instead, we had panic, lockdown, law, punishment, the fining of people who've done possibly less than happened in Downing Street, we'll find out, and the virtually complete elimination of any right to dissent. And that, I think, is a dangerous place for a free country to be.
That's just not true. So I'll pause on the party politics because it's a public health debate, but where is the elimination of the public rights to dissent, bearing in mind we're having a debate that includes dissent? I don't think there's any elimination of dissent. Which newspapers have been shut down? Which TV stations have been shut down?
Peter Edwards, where was the PCR test story in The Guardian? Where was it on Sky and The Beeb?
Yeah.
What about the Johns Hopkins University that suggests, based upon a meta-analysis of 24 studies, that 0.2% of lives were saved by COVID? Where are those stories outside of networks like GBNews?
Well, Mark, I think we always have known, actually, that some people isolating were not contagious. That's not a news item to me. I think we've known that for over a year.
That doesn't answer the question, though.
Yes, it does.
Well, OK, you can... Oh, no, it doesn't. That's not very grown up, is it? When it comes down to it, I think that we haven't been allowed to have the debate because...
But who stopped you? That's what I don't understand. Who stopped you from the debate?
What stopped us, who stopped us, is the media, which instead of being critical and questioning, doesn't even feel it's got the courage at those Prime Minister's briefings or Downing Street briefings to say, why don't we take a different path? Why don't we not vaccinate? Is it so bad? How do you know that vaccinations aren't causing long-term trouble? There's quite a lot of people talking about that now, and I had a very bad reaction to the booster myself, so I've realised that this thing can do you harm. And then the fundamental point is about lockdown. We've talked about Sweden. We've got New Zealand to test as well. So actually, Peter, you're wrong. We will know if, well, at least we'll have a pretty good idea if we've got it the right way or the wrong way. But even the position that you've taken, I'm not being party political, I don't do that anymore. But it's like there's no
about
right...
Keir Starmer while not being party political.
Keir Starmer is a terrible, useless leader.
Why is he ahead in the polls?
Actually...
answer the question.
I'm going to answer the question, yeah. He's actually ahead in the polls. Despite the fact he's so weak, which shows...
Peter Edwards...
Which shows why I think Boris Johnson's going to have to go.
Peter Edwards, I've only got a couple of seconds, but it's unfortunate that you mentioned Keir Starmer, who called Freedom Day on the 19th of July reckless. Yeah. We know how damaging those measures were, but he called lifting restrictions reckless. Cases fell in England. He wanted the Prime Minister's evidence for keeping Christmas going. And don't forget those sage scientists who predicted 6,000 deaths a day from Omicron if we didn't have measures over Christmas. They were wrong, and the media reported that nonsense.
Can I just say that I don't think that the media is quite as one-sided as you say. I mean, I wrote an article where I interviewed a scientist who was talking about masks and whether he thought that they really did work or not, and he had quite a lot of doubt, and that was in the paper. I've seen lots of stories in the paper about people who've had vaccine reactions in the mainstream media. I don't think it's quite as one-sided as you're saying.
Okay, Peter, briefly.
I think people at home have got to know that there's a massive, massive net benefit from the vaccine. Lembit's been very party political.
I'm not partisan at all. I have no vested interest in being party political.
I think the comparison in New Zealand doesn't stand up because it's a totally different country. People are spread in a different way. Briefly, why did cases fall in the summer? I think because it was a summer.
Well, we can agree on that one. Look, I think you'll agree we're travelling business class with my panel tonight. Three of my absolute favourites, Peter Edwards, Hilary Freeman and Lembit Opik will be back shortly. And I think you'll agree that sparks fly when this lot get together. A really big debate next in the big question. Following the controversy around Jimmy Carr's joke about the Holocaust in his Netflix show, should comedy be censored? That's our Twitter poll, so jump on at GBNews on Twitter and let me know your thoughts on that one. Should comedy be censored? It's also the question for our big question after this. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm going to get to your emails very shortly on whether the media were one-sided in their coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. But first, let's have the big question in which we tackle a major topic of the day. Now, following a highly controversial joke in his stand-up Netflix show, Jimmy Carr is facing calls to have his show removed from the platform. Given the sensitive nature of the material, we won't repeat the joke, but it relates to the genocide of members of the Gypsy community during the Holocaust. So that's the question tonight. Should comedy be censored? Let's get some reaction to this set of remarks, these jokes made by Jimmy Carr. Joining me to discuss the issue is the very talented Jewish comedian Josh Howie, a regular on Headliners, of course, as well as Joe Smith, a good friend of the show, who was born into a gypsy family, and he wrote a best-selling book about his life called Gypsy Joe, bare-knuckle fighter to professional golfer. And I'm delighted to welcome the chair of the National Travellers Action Group, Cliff Cardona. Cliff, first of all, your reaction to the Jimmy Carr joke?
Well, I think it's very bad taste, seeing as we've just had the national Holocaust for the Gypsies and Jewish and the Roma people. And at the end of the day, when a comedian comes on the stage, he writes his script of what he wants to say. He knows what he's going to put across. And I think he needs to make a public apology about what he has said. Because at the end of the day, we need comedians, we need a bit of humour, we need a bit of comedy to get us all through life. But when you step off the line and you do something that's very offensive, you need to grasp that straight away and say, look, I've made a mistake here and I won't be doing this again. Because it's becoming hard for all comedians now across the board to even mention anything in different directions.
Well, Joe, great to have you back on the show as well. Joe Smith, what was your reaction when you heard the joke?
Disgusted, saddened, angered. I tried to refrain from anger because you just lose at the situation a bit more. But, at best, disgusted. At best.
Do you accept, Joe, the argument that this was just a joke, that Jimmy Carr wishes no ill on the gypsy community, that his show is called His Dark Materials, and this guy is known for outrageous, close-to-the-knuckle humour?
Look, just like Clifford said, I'm a man that loves humour. We need humour. But I never found humour in sick jokes. They've been put to me in pubs, comedians, many times over the years. And I still stand my ground, and I refuse to laugh. And I tell people, when I hear a sick joke, it's a sick joke. I don't want to repeat sick jokes I've heard on telly because they shouldn't be repeated, okay? But to me, it was nothing short of disgusting and sick. And a man, with his profile, he shouldn't have gone anywhere near that area. Disgusting.
Joe, are these sorts of jokes about the gypsy community familiar to you?
Now, look, we'll have little jokes, right? Like the food amongst the gypsies was, before they were a protected animal, was an egg joke. So you'll have a little joke example. Fastest thing running through a gypsy camp. Fastest thing running on 4 legs through a gypsy camp, an egg joke. Fastest thing on 2 legs trying to catch it, the gypsy. All those little light-hearted jokes we take in. We take a bit of name throwing. Of course you do. Look like any other group of people. But this is men and women and children, for no reason, been brought to their death, been mass murdered. This is 500,000 people. This is mass murder, genocide to the very highest degree. But no reason. There were nomadic people living off the land. Of course, they do some wrongs and rights, like all people do. But what really could they have been guilty of? What was the worst crime they could have been guilty of? Not paying tax? You tell me. This is a sick joke, and him or any other comedian should never go anywhere near this area. Anything sick. There's people like Roddy Barker, Roddy Colbert, I still watch them to this day. They're both passed now, but they didn't even need a swear word, and they were great comedians. You don't even need to swear if you're a good comedian, not to bring this sickness into it. Sorry, mate. No hiding place. Disgusted with it.
Josh Howie, you're a fantastic comedian, a regular on Headliners here on GB News. You know as well as I do that comedy is all about judgment. Do you think that Jimmy Carr misjudged on this occasion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't make a point. I think you can and you should be able to joke about anything. I'm afraid I disagree with your last guest, and I'm not just talking about gypsies or but anything is up for humour. You can get humour out of stuff, but the question is, what are you using it for? What's the point that you're actually trying to say? And I think the problem with Jimmy, and he's a really, we both know him, he's a very nice guy, he's a very funny guy, but I think he has tried to sort of have his cake and eat it, where he does do this dark stuff, but there has to be more of a reason for it. There has to be a point to it. And he tried to do that. And in the longer clip, he does try to give it some context. I would argue that it's just not a clever enough or a good enough or say enough to make that worthwhile, to be able to joke about that kind of subject.
What about censorship? I mean, that's the big question tonight, Josh. Do you think that trigger warnings should appear before that particular Netflix special? Should it be taken down? Should they edit it out? What do you think the authorities should do?
There's a warning. It's called the Jimmy Carr comedy special. Like, if you see it's Jimmy Carr, surely you're going to know, and it's called Dark Materials or whatever. That's what you're getting. That's his shtick. That's what he does. It's like Frankie Boyle. Oh my God, he swore or he joked about this or that. That's what they do. There is a censorship. The censorship is the audience. Will people laugh? Will they tune in? Is there a point? Just because people laugh, by the way, that doesn't mean that makes a joke okay. Then we need to look at why are people laughing at that joke, and that is something that's a different argument.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, what do you think about the idea of censorship? Would you like television companies, social media companies to crack down on these sorts of jokes?
Absolutely. As I'll reiterate, Ronnie Corbett, Tommy Cooper, great comedians. People I still watch today, and other people do. We still watch them on this channel Gold, I think it's called.
Yeah.
You don't need to go in areas to be a good comedian. I'm sorry, you must be a lousy comedian. That was 6 jokes. You know, I'm very saddened for the people that laugh at them. You know, look, I'm a Romany gypsy, yeah, but the mere fact is here, I'm so upset that it's so many people as directed as human beings. We're looking for equality in this world, yeah. We're in 2022, we're looking for equality across the board, and he comes out with this sick joke, tries to make a joke of this. Innocent men, women and children. We're in our mummy's tummies, right? We don't know what year we're going to be born. We don't know what month. We don't know what colour we're going to be. We don't know what country we're going to be. It just so happened that Jimmy Carr was born in the same West London hospital as me. Now, I'd like you to imagine, yeah, his mum or my mum walking out of that West London hospital, yeah, right, and put on a train heading for a gas chamber. That was the truth, harsh reality. That's how sad it was, right? Yeah, and it was only 26 years before we were born, and it was only 700-800 miles up the road in Germany. We didn't know where we were going to be born, in our mummy's tummies, what would happen, who we were. It's not right, mate. He's overstepped the mark, not by a little bit, disgustingly. And I just hope that the public and the people that are employing this man sort it.
Josh, you are a Jewish comedian, and are there jokes about the Holocaust from a Jewish point of view which, for you, are off limits? Now, unfortunately, we're having...
I have used the Holocaust in my comedy. That doesn't mean I'm joking about the Holocaust, saying that that's a good thing or reveling in it. But can you use the Holocaust to make a point about something else, or to make even a point about our society? You can use these subjects, terrible subjects, despicable, evil subjects, and there is humour to be found in there. Not necessarily that you're taking the mickey out of that particular thing, but you can make a point about racism, about anti-Semitism, about anti-Gypsy bigotry. There are valid points that can be made. I just don't think that in this case, Jimmy made them.
Well, look, it's been a fascinating conversation. Great to see both of you again. Gypsy Joe, that's the name of Joe Smith's book, and of course, the brilliant Josh Howie as well. Let's bring my panel into this briefly if we can, because Len Bitopic is with us, of course, Hilary Freeman and Peter Edwards. Peter, what do you think? Should there be censorship in comedy?
Well, your intro made this point. So I thought the Jimmy Carr joke, which I've not seen but I've read a transcript of, was ghastly, and certainly I'm not going to go and pay to see a Jimmy Carr show. But I just want to pick up this point you made about what do the streaming platforms so do, because there isn't really a 21st century mechanism for dealing with these things, because I suspect even if the host took it down, I can't remember the broadcast, but if they took it down tomorrow, I'd imagine it'd be all over YouTube and the internet anyway. So this is not like analogue TV in the 1990s where a show is just taken off air in the end. So I think it is a lot more complex than that. I mean, I think Jimmy Carr shouldn't have told the joke in the first place, but he has. We are where we are. I think there's a real... no one really has a clear idea what to do next.
Hilary, why do you think this conversation is an important one, just from a human point of view?
I mean, can I just say about the joke, what I feel about it? I'm Jewish, and most of my family was wiped out in the Holocaust. So I feel quite strongly about any kind of Holocaust humour. And I think the problem with this joke was actually mainly that it wasn't funny. And it wasn't the type of joke that should be funny. There are lots of different types of humour. And I think there's a joke that actually I read on Twitter today that David Baddiel mentioned, which was about the Holocaust. And in it, a survivor went to heaven and told God a Holocaust joke, and God said, "That's really not funny," and the survivor said, "You had to be there." Now that's a good joke about the Holocaust, and it makes a very good point about the Holocaust, and it's not offensive to anybody. But I think you can't joke about genocide. Genocide's not funny, whether it's about Jews, about gypsies, about anybody, anyway. And there are some things that shouldn't be said.
I mean, look, Lembit, there's no doubt that this joke is deeply offensive. But the question is, do you want to live in a society where a comedian can make that joke and simply face the wrath of public opinion rather than censorship?
I do want to live in a society where comedians can make those jokes and face the consequences. I've done stand-up, never as good as yours, Mark. And I was also involved in the Holocaust Education Trust. So, and I've been to Auschwitz, and it was quite a remarkable, moving experience. The thing is, you don't undo the Holocaust by silencing people who are making jokes like this. Jimmy Carr chose bad humour. It wasn't particularly funny. But no one has to watch it. And
no, they're not going to go out and kill gypsies because of this, but it's feeding into this narrative that gypsies are somehow okay it's okay to get rid of them because they're just gypsies, because they're below us. They're not, and all that feeds into hatred.
But that only works if people are so dumb that they believe Jimmy Carr was making a serious point. And here's the irony: we wouldn't be discussing this issue if Jimmy Carr hadn't made that joke. And the essence of free speech is trusting the public who vote, who have got the right to decide who governs them, enough to let them be offended or not offended, but not to censor in the process. Because once you go down the censorship path, that leads to totalitarianism.
Yeah, but we already do censor. We're not allowed to say something that spreads racial hatred. We're not allowed to incite violence. You've got to have a certain level of censorship to keep society on an even keel. And so I think you've got to be, if you're going to have free speech, you've got to use it responsibly.
You hit the nail on the head there. If I thought Jimmy Carr's comments were actually going to cause physical harm, maybe psychological harm, and that's a grayer area, then I would be against it. And you've said yourself there are laws about that. But just causing offence isn't enough reason.
But Lembit, briefly, I think that was not Hillary's point. It's not that it's either physical harm or offence. Hillary's point, which I support, was that it could seem OK to demonise or target a particular group. Not that someone's going to be attacked an hour after the show, that it becomes OK to single out a particular group in society that already face hardship, face some bigotry, face poverty, I believe, and it becomes OK to target them. That's a concern. So I know it's a bit of an old adage, but you go on a slippery slope. So it's not that someone's going to be attacked tonight or yesterday because of this, but it becomes acceptable to single out minorities.
And so we get to the fundamental difference of view here. I have to trust the public enough to dismiss this as bad humour. You have a different view. You both seem to feel that maybe the public will be empowered to be discriminatory against the gypsy community.
They already are.
Well, yeah, it's existed for centuries, right?
And I don't trust the public because the public in Germany stood by and let the Holocaust happen, just like in other countries. So you've got to...
Well, I think we've made progress. None of us are saying it was a good joke. None of us are thinking it's good to persecute the gypsies. And actually, we have got a difference of view. We're not going to resolve it tonight, Mark. I just think you put this out there, let the public make their decisions, and ultimately most people will make the right one. That's what I think.
Well, what do you think, folks? Should we censor comedy? Should that special be taken off Netflix? What's your opinion? Mark at gbnews.uk. Zoe tells me the results of our Twitter poll are in. We've asked whether you think that comedy should be censored. 93% say no, 7% say yes. We'll get to more of your thoughts after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, with me reacting to the big stories of the day is my fantastic panel, former Lib Dem MP Lembit Opik, author and journalist, former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards, and Hilary Freeman, broadcaster and presenter in Agony Aunt. There you go, we did a little bit of a kind of, bit of a swap there, just to mix it up a bit, keep everyone on their toes. Now, here's a swap. Here's a big idea when it comes to your appearance. A mother complaining about her 26-year-old daughter's brand new tattoo sleeve sparked a debate online, with some sympathising and others saying it was none of her business and that she should get a grip. It's a fascinating story. The question is, tattoos for your youngsters. I mean, what do you think about this, Hilary? You're an agony aunt, so what would you advise this mother who's very upset?
Well, there's not very much she can do now. It's too late. But I mean, I would advise her to just talk to her daughter and you know, just to have a conversation so that they understand each other and where each other are coming from, and she will get used to the idea. But I mean, as I said, it's too late to do anything. Yeah, I mean, I personally, you know, agony aside, as a mother, I mean, my daughter's 6. And she already she buys tattoos. You know, she doesn't buy them. She gets them in gifts and things. The stick-on ones, the transferable ones, obviously not real ones. And you know, she absolutely loves it. And I am horrified. God, thinking that she's ever going to get a tattoo. I don't like them. And actually, feeding into the last discussion that we had, part of the reason I don't like tattoos is because I grew up and the people I met who had tattoos were Auschwitz survivors with tattoos. So for me, it's kind of visceral thing that, you know, being tattooed is not something that is good. But I just think it's not going to, as you age, it's going to look terrible. It's going to impede your job opportunities. If you go for a job interview and you suddenly decide you want to be a lawyer or something, it's going to be a problem. And also, it's going to look terrible when you get older. And everybody's got them now. So it's not even making a statement, is it? It's not anything...
Yeah, I mean, they come in and out of fashion, don't they? But the problem is, once it's on your skin, you can't get rid of it, Peter.
Yes, well, I haven't got a tattoo, but I'm always out of fashion, so I can live with that.
You're like a Chanel suit, just like always in fashion.
Oh, timeless. Oh, my goodness, that is very kind. I think Hilary makes a fair point. If your child has done something you're uncomfortable with, condemning them is not going to help anyone because they'll just entrench their position. But personally, I mean, I'm a parent, and having seen that picture, I'd be really upset. But, you know, if someone's under 18, they're to a certain extent answerable to their parents, and if they're over 18, nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got quite a few tattoos, haven't you? You've got a bust of Paddy Ashdown. Nick
Clegg, no VAT rise, no tuition fees rise.
I'm not going to tell you where that one is. Moving swiftly on, well after the water.
Although I was looking last night for your Joe Swinson tattoo, I couldn't find it anywhere. She seems to have evaded your butt cheek.
And she evaded re-election as well. But and I told you, so I made the prediction.
Yeah, you guys were electable back in the day when you were an MP.
There,
you were a force.
But I led the way when we stopped being electable. When it comes to tattoos, I have no tattoos that I want to talk about. What I will tell you, though, is this thing about young people. I think that if you're under 18, you should really get your mum's permission, your dad's permission. There are two reasons I think people get tattoos. It's individualism or rebellion. That's okay if people want it. I don't particularly like them myself, but you're both right. Just slamming your child is going to guarantee one thing: they'll get more tattoos.
Yep. But you were told not to go into politics, and look what happened.
Yeah, that's what the public said. Yeah.
Listen, so much more to get through. Really excited because coming up, my Mark Meets guest is the man that inspired the classic Disney Hollywood film. The brilliant, of course, comedy show all about bobsleighing, and it was a great film in the 90s starring John Candy. Cool Runnings. We're going to speak to that great man, Devon Harris, shortly. So much to get through. See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On tattoos, Ken says, Mark, I have a full sleeve on one arm, half a sleeve on the other, and my whole back is covered, and I'll be getting more soon. Or Ken, I bet you're gorgeous. So much more to get through. We'll talk about censorship in comedy. We'll also react to my big opinion monologue. I think that the media have been very one-sided about the COVID-19 pandemic. If you want to see that, have a look, because George has crafted it into a video. It's on Twitter now. It's making quite a splash at GB News. Let me know your thoughts. But coming up, my Mark Meets guest is Olympic legend Devon Harris. He was part of the 1988 Jamaica bobsleigh team, the unlikely but heroic story which inspired the hit Disney movie Cool Runnings. We'll speak to him in a couple of minutes, plus lots of your emails. But first, the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has announced 2 new appointments to Downing Street after a wave of resignations this week. Cabinet Minister Steve Barclay is to become Boris Johnson's Chief of Staff, saying it's an honour to have been asked. Gitto Harry, who was an advisor to Mr Johnson when he was Mayor of London, will become Director of Communications. The Prime Minister says the changes will strengthen his cabinet and accelerate his mission to level up the country. The announcement comes as a former minister has become the latest MP to submit a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson. Nick Gibb, who was Schools Minister last year, has joined a number of fellow Conservatives calling on the Prime Minister to resign. It's reported up to 17 MPs have now submitted letters, but a total of 54 are needed to trigger a vote of no confidence. Conservative MP for Thirsk and Malton, Kevin Hollinrake, told GB News the Prime Minister is still popular.
There's a lot of support for Boris Johnson out there. I mean, it's different in Westminster and it's different in the media, of course. I do not think we should have a Prime Minister removed from office in this country because of a media lynch mob. I think we need to go through this process properly. I think we need to see the results of the inquiry and the investigations and make a proper decision from there.
The Duke of York is due to give evidence under oath next month as part of the ongoing civil sex assault case against him. Prince Andrew will face what is known as a deposition in London in what has been described as a neutral location. Virginia Giuffre, the Duke's accuser in the case, claims he sexually assaulted her when she was 17. The Duke strenuously denies all allegations. Boris Johnson has spoken with the French president over the tensions on the Ukraine border. Downing Street says the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron both agreed a diplomatic solution remains the overriding priority. The French leader will visit Moscow next week to hold discussions with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned visit comes as China backed the Kremlin's demand that NATO does not allow Ukraine to join the military alliance. The Queen has marked her 70-year reign by renewing the pledge she made in 1947 that her life will always be devoted to service. In her Platinum Jubilee message, the monarch says she's looking ahead with a sense of hope and optimism. She praises the sacrifices made by her late husband, Prince Philip. Her Majesty also says it will be her sincere wish that the Duchess of Cornwall will be known as Queen Consort when the Prince of Wales becomes king. Well, this is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. We'll bring you more news as we get it. Now, though, let's get back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Thank you, Tamsin. So much to get through in this hour, but can I just react to that huge breaking news just brought to you by Tamsin that the Queen has used the celebration of and the occasion of her Platinum Jubilee to request and support the idea that Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, will be known as Queen Camilla. That's right, Camilla will be Queen of England. A huge story and a characteristically generous thing to do by the Queen herself. In a message to the nation to mark Accession Day, 70 years ago, can you believe it? Remarkable, remarkable achievement. She said that it is her sincere wish that Camilla will be known as Queen Consort when the Prince of Wales becomes king. Now, I think that's great news. It takes it out of Charles's hands. It's the Queen's decision. And that means that we will have Queen Camilla and she will enjoy the authority of one of the greatest monarchs in history. And I think that's important. She's got that all-necessary, all-important mandate. I've got to tell you, I've been a long-standing admirer of Camilla because she entered public life under, let's just call it, complicated circumstances. She and Charles were lovers, young in life, and because of Camilla's romantic history, she wasn't able to marry Charles. I think probably they should have got married and the rest would have been, history. But they finally got together after the sad death of Diana. A difficult gig, marrying into the royal family, and obviously with the background of what happened to Diana. But I just think that Camilla has been graceful. I think she's dignified. I think she's good-humoured. She's done a huge amount for charity, including domestic abuse charities, and I think she will be a fantastic queen. So congratulations, Queen Camilla. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think that Camilla will be a good queen? Mark at gbnews.uk. Now, let's just catch up on a couple of emails from the previous hour. We've been juggling many topics tonight. It's been a really, really busy show. And let's have a look at what you are saying. Certainly in regard to the Jimmy Carr Holocaust joke and whether comedy should be censored, Steve says, "Dear Mark, all jokes are relevant to the delivery. If said with hate, it's not comedy. Comedy is a unique concept of daring, provocation and risque comment meant to offend, but in reality is all untrue and unhurtful. Comedy should not be censored." Spike Milligan's joke, at a time when he interviewed about some difficult times regarding Chris Evans, he was asked, "Is there anything you'd like to wish Chris Evans?" He thought, then smirked and looked up and said in his zany, slow speech, "Yes, I'd like to wish him an early death." There you go. It's sort of dark humour is what Steve argues. We've all got it. These days, he would have been cancelled for that joke within seconds because the woke have zero sense of humour. If you don't like it, don't laugh and don't buy the tickets, says Steve. Cassandra says, "Dear Mark, does your guest seriously think that the German public had any choice about letting the Holocaust happen? Would Hitler have listened? It's a safe bet that the public didn't approve, but had to either keep quiet or stay alive for fear of the consequences." How about this? Ed says, "Humour relies on stereotyping groups or it wouldn't work. It's always been this way and it wouldn't be funny without an element of truth, e.g. Yorkshire people being tight with money, etc." And more. I mean, it just goes on. A quick one on Camilla. Janet says, "Dear Mark, she will make a very good queen." Duncan says, "Dear Mark, there you go again. You just referred to the Queen of England. Of course she is the Queen of the United Kingdom. I've been watching too many of those Hollywood films." Well, speaking of Hollywood films, it's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of showbiz, sport, politics, business and beyond, as well as those who simply have a big story to tell. Tonight, let's meet Devon Harris, a former military officer and retired bobsledder who was one of the founding members of the Jamaican national bobsled team, which first competed in the 1988 Winter Olympics and which famously inspired the hit Disney movie Cool Runnings, starring the late John Candy. As well as inspiring a movie, Devon was honoured by the World Olympians Association and inducted as an Olympian for life in recognition of the significant contribution he made to society in inspiring others never to give up. Devon founded the Keep On Pushing Foundation, which supports the education of kids disadvantaged in disadvantaged communities. He also wrote Yes I Can, the story of the Jamaican bobsled team, and Keep On Pushing, hot lessons from Cool Runnings. Not surprisingly, Devon Harris is now an in-demand motivational speaker, and just telling you about his life puts me in a good mood. Well, I'm delighted to say that Devon Harris joins us now. Hi, Devon.
Hey, Mark, I'm delighted to join you as well. You, I'm sure, will be interested in knowing I have no tattoos, but I have lots of scars.
Oh, so, yeah, I'm sure you do. I mean, for those that don't know, explain how bobsleighing actually works.
Well, it is a winter sport, and I know it's an oxymoron, Jamaica bobsled. But it's we have two different kinds, 2-man and 4-man sleds. The guy in the front is a driver, and then you'll have a brakeman or 3 pushers in the back. So you obviously push the sled to get it started. You jump on. The guys in the back are basically just kind of sitting there and praying, and the guy in the front, he has 2 ropes, and you basically pull left to go left, right to go right, very minimal, lots of hand-eye coordination, high intensity, high focus, and you get to the bottom and it's exhilarating. The champagne of thrills, Mark.
What sorts of speeds would you achieve in a bobsled?
Yeah, so forgive me for not using metrics. I live in America. 80 to 90 miles an hour is where we get up to on the fastest tracks.
That's remarkable. And what about the peril? How dangerous is it, Devon?
Well, you could literally lose your head. That's all. So you could get away with just some normally bumps and bruises. That's typical in bobsledding, but it could become deadly as well.
Yeah. Were you a sporty?
Why you wear a helmet, by the way.
Yeah, you definitely need that. Were you a sporty child?
Yes, I grew up playing football. I almost said soccer. Show you how Americanized I am. And then I ran track. I actually, although I'm Jamaican, I ran 800 and 1500 meters. My idol at the time was Lord Sebastian Coe. And I dreamed that I was going to compete in the Olympics in those events. But I ended up being a bobsledder.
Well, yes, and it was someone suggested to you that there should be a Jamaican team at the Winter Olympics. And at first, I think you were reluctant.
Yes, so as you mentioned, I'm a military officer and I'm a Sandhurst grad. And so shortly after my time at Sandhurst, I'm back in Jamaica working, and the idea came up. And I remember thinking, nobody could ever get me to go on one of those things until my commanding officer literally told me that I'm going to the team trials. And, you know, that just changed the entire equation, didn't it?
So at the time, your attitude was, I will go to war, I will enter military combat, but I'm not going to the Olympics.
Because Jamaica bobsled to me at the time just sounded, as I described it, the worst idea ever conceived by man. I had interest in going to the Olympics, but not to bobsled. But, you know, it goes to show how young and foolish we can be at times, right?
Absolutely. And of course, the story is immortalized in that movie, Cool Runnings. How much of the movie is authentic and true, like the fact that you had to practice at home in Jamaica, even though there was no ice and no snow?
Well, I like to say when the credits roll, it says loosely based. It should say very loosely based on the true story. We did practice in Jamaica, but not as the movie suggested. We had a makeshift sled that we pushed on a flat concrete surface just to kind of practice the starts. And of course, we ran and we lifted weights, but that's the extent of which you can sensibly practice for bobsledding in a tropical environment.
And tell me about your emotions when you arrived at the Winter Olympics and, of course, did so well.
You know how you grow up and you're watching the Olympics, these men and women marching in the opening ceremonies, and you're thinking, wow, those must be some of the best athletes in the world. And then one day, you are the person setting foot in that stadium, 50,000 people screaming, and I promise you, more cameras than you can count. And you know, because you've seen this movie before, that in this instant, your image is on TV sets across the world, and you're just hoping that you can live up to that, thinking that some little kid is going, wow, he must be one of the best athletes in the world. I mean, in that moment, you're living the dream, literally.
And representing your country, you must have been so proud.
Oh, I mean, I think every athlete dreams of representing their country. And so being able to do that, and yes, being one of the first to actually do it at the Winter Olympics just made it extra special. Absolutely.
Did the movie change your life?
That's a really good question. I think the experience of going to the Olympics, being on the bobsled team, changed my life. It's virtually impossible, I believe, to have done something so intense and so challenging and not having it change the way you think, right? And so I often say that the biggest lesson I learned was not the fact that I could learn to bobsled in a very short period of time, but that I could literally accomplish anything that I truly set my mind to. And that really just allowed me to raise my game to a completely different level.
I've done the skeleton, which I found quite scary. I think that's maybe, well, certainly in my case, when I was on a show called The Jump, which was a winter sports show on Channel 4, I think we were clearing about 70 miles an hour, face down, head first on a sheet of polished ice, but it wasn't 80, 90 miles an hour like you with colleagues. Did you have a few crashes?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, I've never done skeleton because my excuse is I like company. But yeah, of course, the most famous of the crashes is the one that took place in Calgary during the Olympic Games. But that season was, I want to say that crash was my 6th or 7th for the season. So it is really part of the process, man. If you're playing cricket, every now and again, you're going to get hit by a ball. You know, in bobsledding, you're going to crash every now and again, too.
How did your career in the military, serving at Sandhurst, for example, equip you for this great challenge?
Really good question. When I was my early days of bobsledding, I equate to my time at Sandhurst. When you're there, you're going through these long periods of intense physical activity with very little rest. And our early days in bobsledding were very similar. And so mentally, I'll go, oh, I've seen this movie before. This is kind of like at Sandhurst. And that really, I would say, above my athletic abilities, helped me to deal with the challenges of trying to learn bobsledding and qualify for the Olympics in a matter of months.
Tell me about somebody that I wonder has been inspired by your story, Benjamin Alexander, who's going to become Jamaica's first Olympic alpine ski racer at the Winter Olympics.
That is so cool, actually. I'm really impressed, and I'm inspired by him and his own journey. I think it's just amazing. When we started this journey, it really was just to qualify for the Olympics and fulfill that dream of representing our country. But to be able to see others in all walks of life, and Benjamin in particular, and of course we have a bobsled team qualifying this year, is also amazing. Can I tell you a really quick story? I just got an Instagram message from a young man who we signed a T-shirt for him at 8 years old when he had just finished undergone brain surgery, and he just messaged me on Instagram. He still has a shirt, and how much that means. So sometimes when you're pursuing your dreams, and you should, man, in the process, you are in fact touching the lives of others, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Are you still in touch with the other boys you competed with?
Yeah, loosely. Michael White actually lives in New York here, and I do owe him a call. I call you Michael. And Chris and Dudley Stokes, they're a little bit more involved. We have been in touch loosely over the years.
Well, I'm pleased to hear it. Now, you are a motivational speaker. You've got a huge following in that area. What do you think are the key lessons for life that you've learned through your amazing sporting endeavour?
Yeah, I think it's all encapsulated in my message, keep on pushing, which obviously has a bobsled analogy. But more than that, it's really about growth. It's about this dynamic, ever-changing process through which all of us have to transform ourselves. And in the process, we're transforming the people and the organizations around us, and also finding a way to push ourselves over, around, across, under whatever obstacle that we may be facing. Because there's, I call it the worst secret in the world, is that there's going to be obstacles between us and the life we dream of. And we have to figure a way to push whatever obstacle it is out of the way to live that life.
So if anybody that's watching this is going through a tough time, of course, we've had a very challenging pandemic, haven't we, Devon? What would your advice be to anyone watching that feels like they're stuck and they want their life to change, but they can't make it change?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you can't give up, right? And so even in the midst of the challenges, embrace the challenge. Don't pretend, don't dip your head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend that, hey, this is not happening. Embrace it, kind of like a boxer in the ring getting punched, right? But then he or she comes out swinging. And so as you're in that challenge, you need to figure out what you like your life to be like on the other end. Figure out that vision, create that dream, set those goals, and then step by step, just inch by inch, start working towards them, embracing the challenge, develop that, what we call a resilient mindset, which is really just kind of staying in the moment and working through the challenges while at the same time focusing on the goals that you want. And you will eventually get out. I am sure of it.
What's the best way for people to find out about what you do?
Easiest way is my name, devonharris.com, devonharris.com. And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at keeponpushing88 as well. So come over there and connect with me.
Listen, you remain an ongoing inspiration. It's been a privilege to have you on the show, Devon, and let's speak again soon. The remarkable Devon Harris, and his website is devonharris.com. Fantastic stuff. And what a great movie that was, by the way, cool runnings. Thanks, Devon. Lots more to come. We're going to get immediate reaction to news that the Queen wishes for Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, to be Queen Camilla. But what's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'll speak to the Queen of US Royal Reporting, Kinsey Schofield, plus more from my panel as well. Should we give up buying new clothes? That's in the news agenda. Plus, another great British game show tonight, The Bald and the Beautiful. Find out why after this.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
An email from Mark in relation to my big opinion monologue, which is now at GB News on Twitter. I think that the media backed the wrong horse in this pandemic and we've all paid the price. Well, Mark says, "Hi Mark, your monologue on lockdown was as ever spot on. Your panellist, Peter Edwards, as ever, was factually incorrect. He stated that the UK didn't have a pandemic plan. Excuse me, as a Freudian slip, a pandemic plan. But we did. Sage threw it in the bin. Anders Tegnell in Sweden said that as the Swedes didn't have a plan, they used the British pandemic plan and was surprised that the UK dumped a perfectly good solution in favour of lockdown." Adrian says on Queen Camilla, "Dear Mark, great news, a really nice thing for Her Majesty to bestow on Camilla on her platinum year. She hasn't put a foot wrong like the Queen herself. Why not?" says Adrian. Well, let's get reaction now to that wonderful story, and that is the fact that the Queen has bequeathed to Camilla the status of Queen Consort, which means that she will be Queen Camilla and will have King Charles as well. Let's speak now to the Queen of US Royal Showbiz and Political Reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
So good to see you, friend. I know you are Team Camilla. I am obviously a fan of your show, and I've seen you say that before. I expected this to happen. I think what disappoints me is that when they initially got married, they did say that they intended for Camilla to be Princess Consort. I'm just somebody that doesn't like being lied to. It does feel like this was the plan all along. Why didn't you just say that up front? It's not, you didn't have to lie to the people to get your way and then, come out with what you inevitably planned all along. So I'm with you. Congratulations to Camilla. I'm excited that she'll be Queen Consort. I know that Princess Diana would be devastated because this was her greatest fear. And you know that I just am obsessed with Princess Diana. That's no secret. But I just don't like being lied to. And when they announced that they were going to be married, one of the things that they made sure to stress was that she was going to be princess consort and not queen, so that they could get their way and so that people would accept them as a married couple. So I think that that's a little interesting. We don't forget these things.
No, well, Kinsey Schofield doesn't, which is why she is the queen of US royal reporting. What do Americans think of Camilla, Kinsey?
I don't think that they had really any negative feelings towards Prince Charles and Camilla until The Crown reemerged and re-brought up these storylines that we had forgotten and forgiven. And truly, they had such a hard time after The Crown came out that they had to stop receiving comments on their social media. So they turned off comments on their social media and were very careful about what they posted immediately after The Crown came out. So I do believe that Americans are a little less supportive of them now that we are rediscussing some of those old wounds. And of course, having Prince Harry and Meghan Markle make us Markle here, that makes people revisit those as well. But Prince Charles has been preparing all of his life to be king. This is not a man that's going to fail. He will be an amazing king. I'm quite certain of it. But am I disappointed by the backstory? Obviously.
For sure. Well, one thing you won't be disappointed by is the 70-year Jubilee anniversary for the Queen. She's been the Queen for 70 years as of midnight. Will that news be a big story in America?
I think it will be a bigger story once we see some of the events happening over where you are, but they're not necessarily planning for big celebrations here. We've got California barely lets me outside to buy milk, Mark. Okay. So
True.
Maybe although they will have a Super Bowl, but I still got to wear a mask. So I don't think that necessarily big events are being planned over in the States. Obviously, we admire the Queen. I don't know if you know this, but I'm coming to see you for the
We are
Jubilee.
so
It's
excited
official.
about this. You're going
My
to be
tickets
live in
are
the studio.
purchased.
It's going to be a Kinsey Schofield special.
But obviously, the real fans of the royal family are jumping on a plane and they're coming to celebrate with you. So that's something to look forward to. But she is just absolute perfection. And I get a lot of questions about the Queen's health. But, I saw this video of her cutting the cake. How witty. She is on her toes. She is so funny. And she seems like she is in great spirits and great health. So please stop asking me if the Queen is on her last leg, people. I'm tired of it. She is good to go. I think we've got another 5 years left and I'm thrilled with it. I just absolutely love seeing her, hearing from her and seeing these quirky moments. She has the best personality and she is absolutely precious.
She is and is unstoppable too. 5 more years, as you say, and the rest. Now let's talk about Rudy Giuliani, former iconic New York mayor and Donald Trump's chief legal advisor. He's been doing some reality TV.
I mean, I can't give him slack for it. I did some reality TV too, Mark, okay? I was on a dating show and I was eliminated almost immediately.
They've got no taste. That was their loss, not yours.
Right. Thank you, sir. But, he did the Masked Singer. I know you have the Masked Singer over there, too. And what happened was one of the celebrity judges stormed off the set once it was revealed that Rudy was behind the mask. His name is Kim Jong. I know you know who he is. He's from The Hangover. He's got this brilliant story. He was a doctor turned comedian, and he is one of my favorite humans. So this devastated me. He is hilarious. And he stormed off the set over Rudy Giuliani being on the program. You saw Robin Thicke storm off the show shortly after he did. And now Robin will stress that it was because he just wanted to check on his friend Ken. But Ken stormed off the set because he just does not like Rudy. He said the Trump administration handled COVID poorly. Point me in the direction of anybody that handled COVID frankly. I mean, I would argue that right there. But, just how silly and sad that you're sitting at home, probably with your kiddos, trying to enjoy the Masked Singer, and there's a political statement being made. I mean, and I know that mistakes were made within the Trump administration, but can we please acknowledge the fact that our country completely crumbled after 9/11? And who was there to make us feel like we were going to rebuild? It was Rudy Giuliani, So I'm sorry that mistakes were made during the Trump administration, but allow us to remember some of these people at their peak and for what they gave to the country. We were terrified after 9/11, scared to leave our homes. We didn't know what was going to happen next. And Rudy Giuliani was one of the people that said, we're going to fight this, we're going to make it right, tomorrow's a new day, and everything's going to be okay. And I mean, I would like for the man to be remembered for that.
Yes, and he was a transformative New York mayor who eliminated or certainly reduced crime and completely rescued that city.
That's the truth. And if you look at the state of New York City right now, they need another Rudy Giuliani. Nobody's getting prosecuted. We're seeing the smash and grabs that we saw in LA happening at higher rates in New York now. All of these boutiques, people just rushing in, grabbing what they want and rushing out because they know they're not going to get prosecuted. They know that cops aren't even going to bother to arrest them because they can't hold them for very long. That's not a city you want to live in. That's scary.
Yeah, too right. Now, everyone assumes that Donald Trump will receive the Republican nomination to run for president in 2024. But Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, might have different ideas.
I mean, it is really looking good for Ron DeSantis. And I saw a betting company called Paddy Power. It's an Irish betting company. Talked to Newsweek this week, and they said that he is the runner-up. He's the front runner. It's Ron for president, not just for the Republican nominee, for president. It's Ron DeSantis, and then Trump and Biden are kind of teeter-tottering. But no, I think that he is making all of the right moves at this point. The Democrats can complain all day long about how unsafe Florida's situation is with the fact that they no longer require you to wear masks and you aren't required to be vaccinated. But show me a Democrat in the Senate or the Congress that hasn't visited Florida in the last 3 months. You're seeing AOC smacking people on the lips, partying without masks on throughout the state of Florida, coming home, getting COVID. It's fine. But yeah, it's just interesting to me. While they have criticized him, obviously they are benefiting off of his leadership and some of the decisions that he's making. He's very strategic on which television programs he's going on and becoming a face of. He's also, pursuing issues that people really care about. For instance, GoFundMe is refusing to give the Canadian convoy millions of dollars. And Ron DeSantis is saying, I'm going to investigate these people. They're going to regret that. Elon Musk is also team Canadian convoy. We love Elon. And then he's also really going after cancer, which, it amazes me that we can find ways to stop COVID as quickly as we can. And we are still haunted by cancer. So I really appreciate the fact that he is taking a stand to really try to put anything he can towards cancer research and figuring that out.
Well, definitely. And he's very pro-freedom, and tragic COVID deaths are not particularly or disproportionately bad in Florida, even though they've had so much more freedom for over a year. Mask mandates, as you said, went months ago. Meanwhile, California has only, in relative terms, lifted restrictions. But I believe that age-adjusted per capita deaths in California are as high, if not higher, than Florida.
And, again, that reflects leadership. I've got my governor and my mayor at NFL games in suites with Magic Johnson, maskless, taking selfies, taking pictures, while telling me and the school children that they have got to wear masks whenever they leave the home. That's ridiculous. And Ron DeSantis, he's not a hypocrite. And I think that is why you might see him attract people on both sides of the aisle. Another reason why you might see him attract people on both sides of the aisle is that there are rumors that President Trump is not the biggest fan. And that would, I think, be out of jealousy. I think that would just be a little concerned because he wants to be the president in 2024. But when you feel like Trump doesn't like him and you don't like Trump, that you're going to be attracted to this guy automatically. So while both parties try to downplay that rumored animosity, I think that it could help him to attract leaders on both sides of the aisle.
Well, very briefly, Kinsey, I think that Ron DeSantis would beat Biden or Kamala Harris in 2024. But the killer question is, can he get past Donald Trump for the nomination?
I would never want to answer that question because it is so tough. I will tell you, I love your hair. I'm so glad you're my friend, but I refuse to answer that question. I don't know. Trump is such a powerhouse. And while I love Ron DeSantis, Trump is a PR machine. He's got an established audience that is obsessed with him. And I do think that he's the man to beat. I don't know. I have a hard time answering that question.
I know. Well, look, I don't blame you. It is an imponderable. And I think the only person that has that answer, Kinsey, is Donald J. Trump. And he hasn't revealed yet, perhaps because he himself isn't sure if he wants to run. It's been such a thrill to have you on the show. Thanks for reacting to that big news that Camilla will be Queen Camilla, which Kinsey argues has been in the pipeline for years. Kinsey, we'll catch you in a week's time. Don't forget, you can check out Kinsey's website. Thank you so much. Kinsey's website is to die for daily. That's right, todiefordaily.com. And we'll cover more showbiz in a week's time. Lots to get through. Another great British game show tonight based around bald celebrities. It's called The Bald and the Beautiful. You won't want to miss that one. Plus, we've got big laughs and tomorrow's papers in headliners after 11. But next in the news agenda with my panel, has COVID killed travel? See you in 2.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'll get to more of your amazing emails shortly. It's been such a busy show. Thank you very much for getting in touch. Let's actually just get this quick line from Ian in regard to censorship in comedy. Ian says, Mark, Jimmy Carr is superb. Please, 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 we can't let the woke brigade have us subjected to the anodyne dross masquerading as comedians that inhabit BBC One on a Saturday evening. In regard to COVID, Lynn says, Mark, I enjoyed your summary of the faults in the statistics regarding COVID. Could you now do a critique of the stats regarding climate change? We don't have to question the basics of the impact of CO2 on climate change, but it might be interesting to review the projections that have been made over many years. Love your programme and GB News generally. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for your email, your kind words, and for watching the show. And we will certainly debate climate. In fact, I think it relates to our next story. Reacting to the big stories of the day, our former Lib Dem MP, broadcaster and now filmmaker, Lembit Opik, author, journalist and former editor of Labour List. It is Peter Edwards. And we also, let's just get that shot. There we are. Got to see that handsome man. And also, I'm delighted to say, Hilary Freeman, author, commentator and agony art. Now, the cruise firm Carnival have cut 2 ships from their fleet because of the effects of the pandemic. It's not the first company to feel the pinch of coronavirus travel restrictions. Who could forget British Airways, who were forced to cut over 10,000 jobs as a result of the pandemic? So has COVID changed the face of travel forever? Peter, what do you think?
I think it probably has changed travel in a big way, but not as much as the high street. I think it's actually British retail that really has been changed forever. Possibly also, depending on prices, public transport changed forever, because I think people are nervous now, especially in a really crowded city like London. But I think there's a difference between getting on a bus that most people do every day for work or a train and holidays. We all have a holiday. I went on holiday with all the tests, all the protections. In COVID, it was a nerve-wracking experience, but I'm glad I got to a hot country. And I think people actually, it's going to be a very, very slow comeback, but I think people will still carry on taking the risk just once or twice a year, even though it costs a bit more and it's a bit more hassle, because we do need a break. But I do recognise the travel industry is having a really tough time and the recovery is super slow.
Yeah, I mean, do you think your travel plans will change going forward?
Well, I think they have, in a sense of having one foreign holiday in the last calendar year was a big deal and a lot of hassle, and I'm glad I did it. And yeah, you go from thinking, say you're working full time and have a decent income, you think, well, I might have 1 or 2 foreign holidays, to, well, I'll try and manage one if the COVID environment allows it, and I'll go for a 90-minute flight, not a 3-hour one, because it's all so much hassle. So I think it has changed a lot of people's behaviour, but it'll come back really, really slowly.
What do you think, Hilary? Do you think COVID has killed travel forever?
No, I don't think so. I think people are itching to get away. I mean, I went on a train up to Birmingham the other day and I was so excited to get out of London.
Very different climate there, isn't it? They got different customs.
I discovered there's actually there's a really cool part of Birmingham that I didn't know existed. It's really nice. I quite
Is that the Bull Ring?
No, not
the canals.
That's gone now.
Of course it has.
I can't remember what it's called. It's like an arty quarter. But yeah.
Oh yes, I've been down there. It's beautiful.
Really nice. But yeah, just to get out of London, just to get away from home, just to go somewhere different. I think people are just aching to do so. So I think there may be a few casualties, but I think generally people will want to start going on holiday.
I got to say, you have got that Birmingham tan. Yeah, you got your bikini line.
I was in Birmingham today.
Is that right?
Yeah,
you're so well travelled
up there. Yeah, they send out regards, by the way, as well. Still talking about your visit. It's not going to change my travel plans because I travel on business a lot. But boy, it's been a nightmare. Peter's absolutely right. So much paperwork.
Yeah.
And you have to get your tests. They change, as you said, you implied as well, they change the rules all the time. Nobody really knows what's going on. It might simply be easier to have fun by getting a suitcase full of booze and going to Downing Street. But basically,
now you're talking.
Some would say. I do think it'll come back. I used to work on Carnival ships, actually doing talks. They're a wonderful company. And I'd be very sad if the cruise traditions go down the drain. They've had this problem before. They had norovirus, which is a really bad sort of gut thing. They came through that. I hope we get back to business.
There was actually a ship that was struck with COVID early in the pandemic.
Right.
And it's been used as a test case by some lockdown skeptics because it was populated by older people. They had no availability of infection control, an older population on the boat, and the tragic death rate was very, very low.
But they were kept on it as well, is that right? For much longer than anticipated.
Yeah.
I was actually asked.
So it's like a movie.
But it was like a movie, but it was a little bit like a control in the experiment, don't you think?
I was actually asked to go and do talks just around that time. I now realise it's because all the other speakers are pulling out. I could have been part of that experiment.
You could have.
The shining at sea.
Yeah, too right. Have you been on a cruise yourself, Hilary?
I don't think I have. No, I've been on a ferry. I went on a ferry to France just before the first lockdown. And there were like 12 of us passengers. You can't go on a ferry as a foot passenger anymore. It's like a dying tradition. And sorry, we're completely gone off the...
No, it is. It's not the done thing anymore.
Not, is it? We were like escorted on, like naughty school kids.
Well, I have performed comedy on cruise ships on many occasions.
Great.
And it's great, but I tell you what, you've got to be on your game, because if you have a bad gig, you've got to spend a week with those people.
You can run, but you can't hide.
You can run, but you can't hide. I've had very positive experiences. I was on the Harmony of the Seas, which is the biggest passenger cruise ship in the world. Something like 4,000 crew for 2,500 passengers. Imagine that. You're outnumbered by staff.
My favourite...
It's like Downton Abbey.
My favourite ship's Queen Victoria. It was a Cunard, actually a Carnival ship. I just love it. But I have to say, if you don't like cruise ships, it will be a nightmare, claustrophobic experience. I loved it. I'll be back there as soon as they let me back on it.
Yeah, my favourite story about comedy on the cruises is actually two other fellow comedians, brilliant circuit comedians, the best at what they do. Not household names, but just great craftsmen. However, they'd done a show on the first night, and it wasn't very well set up, and it went really badly. They both died a death. But they decided just to make the best of the trip. So the next day, they were just on the passenger deck, and they were in the pool, just like with a little beer, having a chat with each other. And a woman came up to them, and she pointed at them and said, "Get out. Get out. You have got no right to be in that jacuzzi after last night's abject failure."
I worked with Roy Walker, Adrian Walsh. The jokes they told me, I'll tell you after the show.
Oh, yeah, unbroadcastable, I'm sure. Well, look, let's talk clothes now, because a Conservative peer, Baroness Anne Jenkin, has taken aim at consumerism. The Baroness is critical of our throwaway approach to what clothes we buy, likening it to the attitude that means so much food is thrown in the bin. She takes pride in the fact that almost all the new clothes that she buys are second-hand. So should the rest of us follow her lead and stop buying new clothes? I mean, look at you, the clothes horse of this show, Peter Edwards, always very elegantly dressed.
Well, you're very kind to me. I'm just wearing my one suit and my very battered...
Haven't you got... You've got like a cream suit as well, I think.
Oh, you're right. I did wear that in the summer.
Yeah, you see, you've got different wardrobes for different seasons.
Yeah, well, 4 suits for 4 seasons.
But that's
more or less...
It's good. It's clever. You're like Princess Anne. You're clever with outfit rotation.
I try to be. I'm sure if you say this, sort of the hate mail is coming in for my outfit.
Never. No hate here. But do you buy many new clothes?
No, I really don't like shopping particularly at all. But my slight worry about this is I understand what was it Baroness Jenkins?
Jenkins.
But I suspect for poorer people they can't afford to buy a pair of Levi's that costs 120 quid. Yeah. And you sometimes have this issue at food as well. When we talk about healthy eating, some people on lower incomes or who are unemployed, they don't have the choice that middle-class people have.
Yeah.
Of course, we'd all like to buy jeans for 150 quid that last for a decade. But unfortunately, I think she's got the right starting point of trying to save the earth. Not everyone has the option of buying jeans for 150 quid or suits for £10,000.
Yeah, what do you think about clothes? Have you got a big wardrobe, Lembit?
Yes, but it's almost empty. My mission is to lose enough weight.
Is it because so many ex-girlfriends have chopped up all your clothes with a pair of scissors?
How very day. How very day. I couldn't possibly comment on that one.
Or maybe you've sold your wardrobe to fans on eBay.
No, I give them away to worthy causes. In fact, I think that's one of my outfits you're wearing.
Yes, I am indeed wearing your boxer shorts.
Oh,
guilty as charged.
Dear, too much information. I just wear whatever comes to hand. If everything's a pound, had a clothesline, I'd be in there. Peacocks
Look, I know that you've got issues with the climate change agenda, but we can agree that the clothing industry is a disaster for the planet.
There is a problem. It's a single use. You chuck them away because things are so cheap.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm doubtful about the human impact on climate change, but it doesn't mean I think it's smart for us to have single-use clothes. It's actually, when you think about how much poverty there is, and also the fact that much of this is done on virtually slave incomes, there's something really wrong about that, and I think we need to sort that out.
And pollution as well, Hilary.
Yeah, and pollution, and also people in different sort of slave labour conditions making the clothes in factories in other countries too. But I think there is definitely a movement in the fashion industry now for vintage clothes. I mean, I've seen there's a website. One of my favourite activities is buying clothes, I have to say, and looking at buying clothes.
You have got, I've got to say, more outfits than Peter Edwards. I'm going to be honest.
I have, and there are lots of now. You can rent things rather than buy them. So they're trying to do away with this sort of mentality of you buy a dress, you wear it once, you throw it away. But I think that there is an issue too that we don't want to clamp down on the fashion industry because it is a big industry and it's a creative industry and it does a lot for this country and we don't want to wipe it out as well.
Yeah. Well, I love charity shops.
Yeah, and charity shops are good.
That's a win-win because you get to splash the cash, but you're giving to a good cause, and you can wear something that probably doesn't fit you, but...
Well, I've got a simpler solution. I have clothes sold that they're coming back into fashion now.
Like that tie.
Thank you very much.
It's time now for this. That's right, it's time now for the Great British Game Show. And tonight's game is called The Bald and the Beautiful. Exciting new research has suggested a breakthrough for baldness is on the way with the recoding of cells, meaning that mice have been able to grow a full head of hair in the lab. So, good news for... I don't know. William Hague. So we're going to play a game of The Bald and the Beautiful. You at home and my panel live in the studio must guess the bald head. So let's start with our first celebrity. Whose head is that? Oh. Now, for those listening, I can tell you it is a bald-headed man with rather pointy ears. He looks a bit intergalactic to me.
Oh, it's Jean-Luc Picard.
It is. And can you name the actor? It's, of course, Patrick Stewart. And Star Trekkers, of course, young Lembit has intimated there. How about our next celebrity? OK, now this is a tough guy.
Oh,
Vin
Jason
Diesel?
Statham.
It's Vin Diesel. Are you a Vin Diesel fan?
How did you
No,
do
I'm
that?
not.
That's incredible.
You were just thinking bald famous people.
Yeah, there's a lot of extraneous information in my brain, I think. I need this fine head of hair.
Can I just say, you've all got pretty good hair.
Yes,
As have you, Hilary.
Yeah, well, that's right. My hair's, relatively decent. I guess it's there's less of it than there was 10 years ago. But I'm unfortunate in that when I brush my hair a certain way, sometimes it looks like a comb-over. And I was nicknamed by one viewer Curly Comb-Over.
Oh, no.
Gives me an idea for a character in a film I might be making, Mark Dolan.
I'll come to the audition.
Oh, you've already passed.
Really?
The only other person who could play you is Ed Sheeran.
No, he's a bit busy at the moment. There you go. How about our next celebrity? Let's go for this one. Surely recognisable by his body. Very muscly, very muscly man.
Called The Rock, is it?
Well done, it is The Rock. Look at you, you're very good on your action heroes, Peter.
I haven't seen his movies, but I think I must read a lot of newspaper gossip columns to...
Yeah,
I think
that
it
was
must
The
be
Rock.
because I just don't like bald men, so I clearly never...
I'm still waiting for Andre Agassi in this quiz.
Well, you read the whole thing now.
Just a matter of
Andre
time.
Agassi before and after. Madonna 1980s perm and then the 2000s.
See, Hilary, we're always told that bald men are sexy and virile, but you're not so sure.
I just like men with lots of hair. I actually like quite long hair of men as well. So.
Do you? And what do you go for? Do you like the jet black intensity of Simon Cowell? Do you like the kind of blonde chaos of Boris Johnson?
Or the silver fox look?
Hey, there you go.
My partner has very dark hair, so I have to say the jet black.
Your partner's very lucky indeed. Let's move on to our next celebrity. Let's power through these now. Who is our next celebrity? Let's have a look at this one. Right, you can see glasses, a bald head, a leather jacket. This person would be very good baking cakes, in my opinion.
Matt Lucas.
It is Matt Lucas. Well done. Little Britain star. Great British Bake Off.
He's running away with it.
Yeah.
Prize.
I think he lost his hair at a young age, but he made up for it in great comedy. How about
Okay, the next
celebrity?
one is Duncan Goodhue.
Could it be? Well, let's have a look. Who is it? Let's have a look at our next celebrity. Here they come. It's a major Hollywood star. Been in Tarantino movies.
Oh, Bruce Willis.
Unfortunately for our audience, it's still me in frame. But there you go. It is an actor that has done Marvel movies, but he's also been in... let me think what he did. He did, of course, famously Pulp Fiction.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson. Well done. We've got time for one or two more. Oh, we're out of time.
Completely thrashed by Peter.
I want to
recount
my amazing panel. We had Thierry Henry and Bruce Willis. Of course, you can't do this game without Bruce Willis.
Well, I got that before you even...
Thierry Henry.
Thanks to my amazing... Oh, yeah, he's had it all shaved off. My amazing panel, thank you so much. We loved having you. Please come back soon. Also, thanks to you for your company and my amazing team for working so hard to put together a really interesting and busy show. Headliners is next. I will be in the hot seat with two top comedians looking at tomorrow's papers. I'll see you in 3 minutes.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking windy, especially in the north, where there'll be wintry showers. Persistent rain elsewhere. Let's take a look at the details. The day will get off to a very set start across Devon and Cornwall, with heavy rain for most. Highs around 11 Celsius, but feeling colder in the wind and rain. Meanwhile, in the southeast, the rain won't be as heavy to start, but it will be cloudy and blustery and